My name is Steve Scholl. I'm a member of the Alumni Board for the UNM School of Law Alumni Association, an organization of which every graduate of the UNM School of Law is a member. And we're proud of that fact that upon graduation, everybody who's a graduate of the school is a member of this association. And I have said it before, about 15 years ago when we were celebrating 60 years, and now we're celebrating 75 years, but we, the alumni, are the common denominator that makes this school great because we're the one constant. The people who have attended school here, who have gone to school here, and who go out and practice law from here are really the core of what makes the UNM School of Law great. And with that, I'd like to get the evening's festivities off to a grand start by introducing our Dean, Camille Carey. Our Dean, I'm going to ask her to come up and make a couple of introductory remarks, so please join me in welcoming Dean Carey. Dean, I softened them up for you. They're all yours.
Thank you, Steve. Hello, everyone. Good evening. I love the energy and that everyone wants to chat. But let's go ahead and get started with our program. Good evening and welcome. I am the new Dean of the Law School, Camille Carey. It's a pleasure to welcome you to another Distinguished Achievement Awards dinner. Thank you all for joining us this evening. This year marks the law school's 75th anniversary, and there's no better way to commemorate it than to celebrate the people who have contributed to making our law school the vibrant and caring community that it is. I am thrilled to recognize tonight's extraordinary honorees, Sudine Kelly, David Martinez, Judge Linda Vanzi, Rebecca Gallegos, and Phil Davis. We miss you dearly. Each honoree has touched the lives of countless students and has given so much to the UNM Law School community and our greater community. I also want to thank our sponsors for their leadership and generosity. Thank you to our event sponsors, Jenner and Block, and Martinez, Hart, Sanchez, and Romero. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, Adams and Crow. And thank you to our memento sponsor, Parnell Law. Please take a moment to view in your program all of tonight's sponsors who have helped us raise over $100,000 through tonight's event. I also want to thank the Law School's Alumni Association Board for making tonight's event possible. The Law School's Alumni Association raises nearly $200,000 each year through this dinner and the Law Scholarships Golf Classic. Each year, the Alumni Board provides $75,000 in critical scholarships for law students. I'd like to ask every member of the Alumni Board to stand and allow us to recognize you for your dedication and service to our law school. Alumni Board. I'd also like to recognize the members of our 75th Anniversary Steering Committee who have worked tirelessly to help us celebrate our Diamond Jubilee. Members of the Steering Committee, please stand up. And the reason many of you are here tonight is due to the efforts of our 75th anniversary class ambassadors. Class ambassadors, will you stand up, please? Finally, to all of you here tonight, please accept our heartfelt gratitude for all that you do for our law school. Our law school is a special, close-knit community unlike any other law school in the country, and we treasure that. The formal program will begin in a few minutes. Until then, please enjoy your dinner, and thank you so much for being here.
I'm proud that Jenner and Block now knows that the UNM School of Law graduates the best lawyers in America. I want to introduce you to some of my New Mexico colleagues here at Jenner.
My name is Leonard Powell, and I'm an associate at Jenner and Block in the Appellate and Supreme Court and Native American Law practices. I started my legal career at the Pre-Law Summer Institute for Native American Students at the University of New Mexico School of Law. I loved my time in Albuquerque, and I return every chance I can for work or pleasure.
I'm Max Minsner. I'm a native New Mexican, born and raised, and was very fortunate to be on the faculty of the University of New Mexico School of Law for many years. After my time at UNM School of Law, I was a partner in the energy practice at Jenner and Block, where I worked very closely with Sue Dean Kelly on a range of issues that are very important to the state, from energy law to Native American law to other topics.
I'm Jeff Dennis, a 2003 graduate of the UNM School of Law. UNM School of Law is a place where I didn't just learn how to be a good lawyer. It's where I learned to bring passion to the issues I'm working on, to practice law with cultural awareness, and to pursue justice and protect the rule of law in everything I do. That foundation led me to a wonderful life and career in public service, in great firms like Jenner and Block, with great colleagues like Sue Dean Kelly, and in mission-driven nonprofit advocacy, seeking to build an equitable, clean energy economy and combat the climate crisis.
Good evening. Welcome to the 2022 Distinguished Achievements Award Dinner. Try saying that 5 times. My name is Cheryl Saavedra, and I'm a 1994 graduate of the UNM School of Law. I am also currently the board president of the UNM Law Association. I'm honored to welcome you here today. On behalf of the Alumni Board, I thank you for being here. We're grateful to have so many amazing people gather together in celebration of our amazing law school community. It's exciting for us to see so many distinguished members of the bench and bar here tonight. We want to thank you all for joining us tonight to celebrate the inspiring careers and accomplishments of this year's very deserving honorees. I'd like to thank and recognize the members of the Distinguished Achievement Awards Dinner Committee who are listed on the back page of your program, and especially committee co-chairs Samantha Adams and Steve Scholl. In addition, Sam wasn't able to join us today, but you met Steve at the beginning of the program. In addition, I'd like to recognize past members of the Alumni Board whose hard work and dedication paved the way for my fellow board members and me. Thanks to the foundations you have laid, we are now able to provide over $75,000 in scholarships each year. Would former members of the Alumni Board please stand to be recognized? And thank you to Dean Carey and the law school staff who have worked very hard to support this event. A special thank you to Melissa Labato. The Alumni Board would be lost without you. Thank you for all that you do for us as an organization and for the law school as a whole. Dean Carey expressed thanks to our sponsors of the Alumni Association. I'd also like to thank and recognize our many sponsors. With your help, each year this event endeavors to attract even greater proceeds which go towards supporting vitally important scholarships and much more at the law school. Over the years, hundreds of thousands of dollars in direct student support has been raised. This year, we are proud to share that this evening's proceeds total $105,681. That exceeds our goal of $100,000. And now, to the reason that we're all here, to honor tonight's Alumni Promise and Distinguished Achievement Award honorees, I will now hand things over to our Master of Ceremony, Professor Joseph Schremer. Please join me in welcoming Professor Schremer to the stage.
Good evening, UNM Law School community. I can't hear you. And good evening to the folks watching at home. Don't worry, I have ordered a medium rare steak for each and every one of you on Zoom, and I will consume them all after I'm done here tonight. I'm Joe Schremer, and for those of you I haven't had the chance to meet, I am a junior professor at the university. I teach property, contracts, oil and gas law, applied stand-up comedy, and a very, a diverse array of other kinds of classes. And this is actually my honor to be emceeing this event for the second year in a row. And to be truthful with you, I have no idea why they asked me to do this again. And if you were here last year, you also have no idea why they asked me to do this again. But upon reflection, it occurred to me that there is a labor shortage, and good help is impossible to find. No, but the truth is I was a little reticent to take up the role of MC again, and so they had to entice me at the law school just a little bit. They said, Joe, if you make the people laugh, the law school will give you tenure. And I said, that's a huge relief, because these jokes are like the only writing I've done in 2 years. But in all seriousness, this is a big year for the law school, one of the biggest in recent memory, I think. Among other things, we have a new dean. Dean Camille Carey, give it up. Oh, we're so excited about our new dean. Little known fact about Dean Camille Carey, she grew up on a farm in Montana. Tough people up there. And as you would expect from a farmer, you can find Dean Carey up at the crack of dawn every day milking the donors. And every evening at sundown, you can find Dean Carey bailing with a pitchfork money right on into the law school coffers. It's been one great big harvest since Camille took over, and on behalf of myself, Dean Carey, and all the other hogs at the law school, we appreciate the extra feed. But of course, it is also a big birthday for the law school, 75 years. That's huge. What a run. So at 75 years old, the law school is squarely in the boomer generation. Had you thought about that? It's a baby boomer, and suddenly, all of a sudden, it makes sense. It still hasn't retired. It refuses to work from home anymore. A couple of years, it accidentally got locked out of its own computers. It's pretty much come to terms with the fact that it's never going to get the millennials to move out. And at this point, most of us are just waiting on it to run for president. But before we proceed much farther, I would like to take a moment to get something off my chest, to mention something that I find really suspicious about the origins of our beloved law school that, I find none of you are willing to talk about. Consider this. Our law school would have opened its doors to its first students in August or September of 1947. Well, recall that on July 7th, 1947, an unidentified flying object crash landed on a farm outside of Roswell, New Mexico. And recall further that the government suppressed all news stories about said UFO crash and has covered up all the evidence and continues to insist to this day that extraterrestrial aliens had nothing to do with that crash. Now, friends, I am no conspiracy theorist, but doesn't it seem a little odd to you that the Roswell event preceded by only 1 month the first appearance in New Mexico history of law professors? That coincidence might just be a little bit too much for me to swallow, but nevertheless, before they send the men in black suits up to carry me off, I think we ought to get started with tonight's awards. Our first award of the evening is the Alumni Promise Award. This award honors a recent UNM Law School graduate who has contributed innovative or substantial service to the law school, its students, or its community. This year's honoree is Rebecca Gallegos. Rebecca graduated from UNM Law in 2014, and she's remained closely connected to our law school since then, having taught as an adjunct professor in the recently created lab class, which is now part of the required 1L curriculum. In 2021, Rebecca and her husband and fellow UNM Law alum, Julio Romero, established a scholarship at the law school for first-generation students. Rebecca currently practices with the Pfeiffer, Hansen, Mullins, and Baker law firm. And I would turn your attention, please, to our television screens to learn a bit more about Rebecca.
My name is Rebecca Gallegos, and I'm a 2014 graduate of the UNM School of Law.
I've known Rebecca Gallegos for basically all her life. She's actually my cousin. A lot of people don't know that, but I've learned recently that she is my first cousin removed. I was so proud when I found out she was originally going to the University of New Mexico Law School. Obviously, I'm a graduate from a few years ago, and knowing her, and she was going to thrive in this environment, and I couldn't have been more right. Well, Rebecca definitely represents the best of the best this law school has, not only on the local level, on the state level, but of course the national level. Her promise and drive is making her not only a better person, but making New Mexico, our law school, even better than it has been before. So I want to start by congratulating Rebecca on what she's done. This award is perfect for her. I know the Alumni Board has made a great choice. I wasn't part of that choice, and if I would have been, I would have been on that table screaming and yelling, going, this young lady deserves all the accolades possible. And then when we get back home, all I hear about from my mom is, Rebecca got this, Rebecca got that. And now I get to go home and brag and go, I was part of that process. And her family and our family is definitely beyond, like before, I can't say it any other way except ecstatic that she's getting this award.
It is my pleasure to present the 2022 Alumni Promise Award to Rebecca Gallegos. Join me in welcoming Rebecca to the stage.
I want to share a bit of my spring and summer with you all as I prepare to receive this great honor. It's May 2nd, 2022. I'm in the space we all know so well, working nonstop, worrying about our clients, mind whirling with to-dos, strategies, and arguments. And on that May Monday, I was reflecting on the Court of Appeals argument from a few days earlier, where I was defending an attorney held in criminal contempt and sentenced to prison after standing up for the rights of his own client. I am proud the process played out the way it should, however imperfect, and I'm proud I had the tools to do it. And I'm proud this law school and the Pfeiffer firm set me on this path. But on that particular Monday, I looked down at my phone to an alarming notification. The Dobbs decision was leaked. Roe will fall. I stared at my phone in disbelief, frozen, devastated. How can that be? I started messaging my colleagues and family, holding them close, sitting in shock. How are we supposed to continue the work we do every day when an institution we trust to protect our rights had failed to do so in one swift move, and with a shocking attack on substantive due process? And then I remember how we've always survived through tough times. I remember the strength of my parents and my grandparents who survived difficult times and had less rights than I do now, but who also taught me the importance of voting, that education is everything, and that politics is more than just a game you watch. I think of my husband, Julio, who fights tirelessly every day for victims of abuse to protect all of our right to vote and equal access to the courts. And I think of Mark and Sarah, my mentors and my friends, who show me what it looks like to advocate brilliantly and compassionately. And I think of my professors at this law school who prepared me for this very fight. Professor Homer, who taught me how to write, Professor Bach, who taught me con rights, Professor Mintzner, who taught me all about rules and procedure, and Professor Mary Pareja and Jim Butler, who first taught me what it takes to be a lawyer. Thankfully, 2 days after finding out that Roe was going to fall, I flew to Denver for a Planned Parenthood board meeting where we grieved, we let it sit, and then we rolled up our sleeves and got to work. I can't help but see the parallel in the justice we seek for our clients, in the career we chose for our lives. We sit with our clients as they grieve, seek remedies, and as we try to make sure the losses they face don't happen to others. And that's the work we do in the abortion access space. We want future generations with more rights than their parents, with more freedom than their ancestors. I leave you with To Kill a Mockingbird's definition of courage, my adage when things are tough. Courage is when you know you're licked before you begin, but you begin anyways, and you see it through no matter what. You rarely win, but sometimes you do.
Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. And thank you for all of your contributions to the law school and legal community. And we look forward to many more in the years to come. We turn our attention now to the Distinguished Achievement Awards this year. And the first Distinguished Achievement Award honoree of the evening is the late Phil Davis. Phil Davis graduated from the University of New Mexico School of Law in 1978. After law school, he clerked for the Honorable Edwin L. Meacham of the Federal District Court for the District of New Mexico, and then spent 1 year teaching law at the University of Indiana. Somebody waved some smelling salts under his nose, and then he went into law practice and began what became a legendary career in civil rights law. And of course, Phil Davis worked on and led a number of landmark civil rights and class action lawsuits, trying cases across the entire state, all while teaching classes at the University of New Mexico School of Law and mentoring countless law students and young lawyers for the many years before his untimely passing. So turn your attention with me to the screen once again to learn more about our first Distinguished Achievement Award honoree this evening, Phil Davis.
I met Phil Davis in 1976 in the forum of the law school over there, and I just stopped by there and sat in that same space where I met him just now to warm myself up. Alice Tomlinson Lorenz introduced Phil to me in 1976 in the law school forum. And she's one of my dearest friends. Her husband's one of my dearest friends, and Phil has become one of my dearest friends, and we've been friends for 45 years.
I knew Phil Davis from the time we were in law school. He was a year ahead of me in law school.
I first met Phil Davis when I was a law student. I had drafted a memo for the ACLU about roadblocks and the Fourth Amendment, and I went over to the ACLU to present it to Phil and Maureen Sanders, which was like the Supreme Court of Civil Rights. And then after that, I knew him as a friend. We would have breakfast every couple of months, and a colleague. And then he would teach at the law school. During the clinic sessions, he'd come in and lecture on attorney's fees.
Phil and I worked on, I don't know how many, dozens of cases together, including 3 massive class action lawsuits that go over a quarter century. So we've worked together. I've spent more minutes with Phil Davis as a lawyer than any other lawyer. Phil and I also had a friendship, and so I knew his wife, I knew his children, and his daughter Rachel, his firstborn, and my daughter Rachel, my firstborn. His Rachel was my Rachel's babysitter. And so Rachel number 1, the young one, named herself, and Rachel number 2, the babysitter, have been friends for decades too.
I tell people that, you know, when I noticed Phil as a second-year law student, when I was first-year law student, after I got my head out of the books for a while, I looked over and I thought, God, he's cocky. I retained that description of Phil over the last 45 years. Although the cockiness I learned was for different reasons. You know, the original cockiness was a young, smart, good-looking guy who was gonna take on the world and knew everything. He later learned he didn't know everything, but he didn't lose his cockiness because he became so proficient and knowledgeable in the area of law that he worked in that it was almost a right to be cocky because he knew what he was doing.
My favorite thing about Phil is he was so human. Leon Howard, the ACLU legal director, described him as the perfect mix of gruffness and sweetness. You know, he had this sort of strong personality and exuded confidence, but we'd have breakfast and I could talk to him about anything, whether it was, you know, a case, it was my dog passing away. He was just such a lovely human being. And you saw that in his work, you saw that in his dedication to his clients, but you really saw that as a friend.
Phil's passions were too numerous for this video to capture, but some of the ones we overlapped on were his passion for making sure that no one would be mistreated by the government and get away with it. And it's impossible, of course, for even Phil to have righted every wrong when people would come to him. They came in droves to Phil for help. But Phil bent over backwards, if he couldn't take the project, to try and find someone who could, because Phil wanted everyone to get justice.
After I had done some practice, private practice, I went to the law school to teach full-time for 10 years. And when I left there, I set up a practice with Duff Westbrook, and we were right next door to Phil. And so the 3 of us were doing civil rights cases, and we had a blast. We were serious, but we had a blast because we had a cadre of people who thought about things. It was a great brain trust.
Just a brilliant writer, just able to get right to the heart of a matter. And you could see that in the way that he worked his cases, in the way that he handled mediations. Al Bronstein was an old-time prison litigator from the ACLU. Was out here, and we went to see some prison clients together, and he once told the prison client that I had, Phil Davis is looking at this case too, and Phil Davis is the best civil rights lawyer this side of the Mississippi. And that's how widely respected he was for his legal acumen.
Phil's parenting was much like his way of being my co-counsel and my teammate. He encouraged, he found things to praise, but he never exaggerated those things. Phil has helped Nick and Rachel see themselves accurately, and he has challenged them to rise to the occasion. And Nick's doing it right this minute. Nick just had his first jury trial where his father had no part. And Rachel, who's a doctor, Phil called her Dr. Rachel many times in our collective presence because he helped her develop her unique and distinct strengths and qualifications and then deferred to them and relied on them. And so he helped each kid become them, not some image that Phil might have had of what a child should be like.
The thing I admire most about Phil was his commitment, both to his family and to civil rights, particularly civil rights in New Mexico. He was well liked and well received by the national ACLU when we were working on things, but his commitment really was here in New Mexico for all over the state. And he realized how important it was to have somebody fighting for civil rights for those who were in New Mexico.
You know, I mean, I learned a lot of civil rights law and how to practice from Phil. But what I really learned from Phil was how to be a loving human being. He loved his family so much. He loved his wife and his kids and his grandkids so much. And you could just see it in the way that he talked about them. We'd have these breakfasts, and you know, we'd catch up and talk about his family and whether or not, if they were going to go to the cabin and what they were doing for their summers and how the grandkids were. And we talk about my cases or my teaching, and then we'd go to leave, and he'd always end the breakfast, with a hug and say, "Love you." And who does that? He was just a lovely human being.
Phil lawyered to the last day. Phil lawyered to the last hour and a half of his life because that was his passion, to provide access to justice to all comers. Phil, unlike many, made it a point to provide access to justice to those least able to buy it. And it was most essential to Phil that he be the conduit for people who didn't have power and prestige and status to get access to justice. And oftentimes, Phil actually got them justice. And so this school, if it stands for anything, stands for the Phil Davis values that he manifested every day of his life to the last hours of his life.
The last time I saw him was at a memorial for Reber Bolt, another ACLU former legal director. And it was at Judge Rod Kennedy's home. And because of the pandemic, we hadn't gotten to see each other as much. And I'm so thankful that Rod had that memorial service, so I could say that I saw Phil one last time.
Phil saw me. Phil got me. Phil accepted me and respected me enough to point out my faults. He cared about me so deeply that he helped me be a better person.
I want to thank the family for asking me to speak on behalf of Phil in this award ceremony. It was a great honor for me to speak. It was also a great honor to be asked to speak at his celebration of life a while ago. It's hard for me to speak about Phil because in some ways I haven't admitted to myself that he's no longer there at the other end of a phone call or an email. But I really want to thank the family for asking me to do this. And I also want to thank the family for sharing him with us, because the us is the what we call the firm. And the firm is all those civil rights attorneys out there in New Mexico who are fighting every day for the people of New Mexico. And Phil was the leader of the firm. And so I thank the family for asking me to do this.
When Nick asked me if I would talk, I remember my initial reaction. My initial reaction to Nick was, yes, of course. My initial reaction inside was, I don't know if I can do this, because I just really love the guy. And it means so much to be able to talk to you all about him because he was just such a lovely, warm human being and such a kind friend. Yes, he was a wonderful, amazing litigator. Yes, he was a terrific civil rights attorney. He was Mr. Civil Rights New Mexico. But to me, he was the other guy on the other side of the breakfast table, listening to what I had to say and caring about what I had to say. And I really missed that. And so getting to talk about that means the world to me.
Phil's family is my family. And Lee and Nick and Rachel have been my sister and niece and nephew, just like Phil has been my brother all these years. And among the hundreds of people who admire Phil, you choosing me to speak on his behalf is one of the greatest honors I've ever had.
Please join me in welcoming Phil's son, Nick Davis, to the stage.
Oh, what do you say after that? Thank you. Thank you. God, he'd be tickled that Judge Vanzie was also being honored tonight. And to hear all that and to see all you, he'd probably taken the award and, I don't know, put it in the closet. But thank you for the rest of it. Ooey Pooey, I forgot about that. Yeah, he did a year at Ooey Pooey while my mom was doing her post-bac in Indiana and was a professor and said, yeah, I'm going back to litigating. So many stories. I remember as a kid driving back from skiing and he'd be like, let me tell you this fact pattern. How much do you think it's worth? I'm like 9. I'm like, I don't know what happened here, you know, and we became these conversations. I remember I was graduating law school, and we were at Vinaigrette. We run into then Justice Chavez. And Justice Chavez looks at me and says, Nick, why aren't you clerking with me? And I said, I want to be in front of you, not work for you. And he turns to Phil, gives him a little chin bump, looks at me and says, go pick a fight, I'll see you up there. Phil knew what he knew. He was so certain in that. And what was so amazing in some ways was then he could be so open at the same time that he had this certainness. To your point of view, to listening to you. God, he could kick your ass in the courtroom and then you would want him to mediate your case. The number of times defense attorneys told me I would have him mediate my case. Who does that? Like Professor Bach says. He was a towering intellect. God, if you ever gave him something you wrote, you knew it was coming back with pen all over it, right? I loved going to work for him. I put pen all over his stuff right back, you know? And that was it. That was the challenge. You can be good. We can do this. I expect that. And I think that was what's so great about it. But then he'd be willing to sit down and talk to you about what it would take. Here's how you do it. That wasn't a bad idea. Write it like this, right? So it was both pieces to it. So I gotta say this, the number of times I walked by those pictures in the law school, I wanted his to be up there. I'm happy for this. Thank you all.
Thank you, Nick, for accepting that on behalf of your father, and thank you to, I understand, your mother and your sister for being here tonight and allowing us to honor the great Phil Davis. Our second Distinguished Achievement Award honoree this evening is Professor Sudeen Kelly. Sudeen graduated from Cornell Law School and then made her way out west to Albuquerque, where she became a founding partner of the firm Lubin, Hughes, and Kelly. She went on to work at the Attorney General's office in the Consumer Division, and later served as a commissioner for the New Mexico Public Service Commission. Following that, she joined the faculty here at UNM School of Law, where I know from many conversations I've had with former students of hers was just about the best darn professor we've ever had. But it's really the impact she had on hiatuses from teaching that's really remarkable. Among many successful hiatuses back into practice while a professor, she was a legal aid to her former boss at the AG's office, then U.S. Senator Jeff Bingaman. And eventually, she was stolen away from the law school by a fellow named President George W. Bush when he appointed her to be a commissioner on the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission in 2003, and then reappointed her for a second term, and then his successor, President Barack Obama, reappointed her for yet a third term in 2009. Following that, Sudeen joined the practice at Jenner & Block in Washington, D.C., where she now splits her time between here and D.C. and is the co-chair of that fine firm's energy law practice. So without further ado, let's turn our attention once more to the television screens to learn more about our second Distinguished Achievement Award honoree, former UNM law professor and FERC Commissioner Sudeen Kelly.
She is an expert in the field of energy regulatory law. That is really important, to know your subject area in and out, but also to just be a good and knowledgeable and wise person. That's Sudeen wrapped up with a bow. I've known Sudeen for probably around 23 years now. I was a student of hers when I started in law school. When I joined Modrell Sperling as a brand new lawyer, she was my mentor.
I know Sudeen Kelly because both of us came to New Mexico at approximately the same year. Sudeen and John and my wife Sally and I attended a continuing legal education, Spanish for people who don't speak Spanish. And John and Sudeen sat next to us. We became very good friends.
I first met Sudeen as a first-year law student. It happened to be the very first year that she was a law professor at the University of New Mexico School of Law. She was the professor in my small group as a first-year student, so I got to know her fairly well in that context. And then after she had been at the law school for 15 or so years, she was considered to be a partner at the Modrell Sperling firm, where we were pleased to hire her.
You know, what I really appreciated about her as a teacher is that she was able to take very complex subjects and explain them in a very clear way for new law students and people that didn't have a lot of experience in that area.
She taught an administrative law class that was very, very popular, and it's my recollection that that administrative law class was so popular that it became part of the first-year curriculum as long as she was here at the law school. That would never have happened. It's probably the only law school in America that had a teacher who could command a first-year course in administrative law. Terrific teacher.
When Sudine came to the Modrell Sperling firm, she already had an amazing reputation within the utilities and renewable energy field. She left our firm to join the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, which is the commission that regulates transmission lines, natural gas pipelines, and the like.
So when I joined Modrell Sperling, I didn't think I would be practicing energy law. But I was assigned to Sudine as a brand new lawyer, and I quickly became very entranced with that practice area. She was a great mentor, a great teacher. I got very captivated by that practice area of energy regulatory law because it was so interesting. She made it so interesting, and it was intriguing.
Senator Bingaman, who was then the chair of the Natural Resources and Energy Committee in the U.S. Senate, found that Sudine knew everything whenever he consulted with her. And he asked her to take a year's leave of absence and go to Washington, D.C. to work in his office. She did that. She was so good at what she did that President George Bush actually appointed her to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And not just that, but actually President Obama, of a different party, gave her a second term because she was so capable, so willing to listen to both sides, so good an administrator and organizing the commission that he had no choice but to bring her back for a second term.
I think the key to Sudine's successful career is the fact that she is able to take complex concepts in her field and communicate them in a way that's very accessible to everyone. She's very understandable. That's one of the reasons I liked her so much as a law professor.
I think the absolute favorite thing about her, for me, is that she's so willing to share her expertise and herself, not just as a mentor, but as a friend as well, and to give support. That's a rare thing, I find, and it's appreciated especially by, I won't say younger lawyers, because I wasn't that young when I became a new lawyer, but I'll say by new lawyers of any age.
She was always a professional. She was a person who came to class well prepared. She enjoyed engaging in the students. She kept long office hours. She had much experience in the practice of law in energy and natural resources and public utilities, and she brought all of that experience into the classroom. Our students were greatly benefited by that over the years, as was the state of New Mexico, because many of our students went into energy law, natural resources law, and public utility law, and did a lot for New Mexico directly because of her teaching and her scholarship.
Sudine is special primarily because of her genuine personality and her likability. She is at the forefront of the whole field that she is involved in utilities law, and has a reputation that is just impeccable. She has reached the heights of basically what you can reach in her field.
I think she demonstrated to everyone that you don't have to be an electrical engineer. You don't have to be a PhD in economics. And you don't even have to be a man. You could be a woman and understand this complex area and become an expert in it.
The reason I really know that she's important is not so much that she has served for 3 large law firms creating new energy departments on their behalf, but because she had enough power, enough clout in a very big game between the Washington Nationals and the Los Angeles Dodgers to get us 2 tickets in the 12th row right behind the Yankee dugout. I tell you, that in Washington, D.C. is a powerful woman.
One of the wonderful things about Sue Sudine as a lawyer is that she was always unfailingly courteous, polite, professional. That was, you know, as well as beautiful and brilliant. Okay, so cut the video there. I only heard her swear one time, and it was right at a person at the PRC who was just being a jerk. And he was objecting to substitution of a witness in a hearing. And he was just being nasty. And so they took a break, and she went up to him. I was right there. She went up to him and said, "Why are you being such an You cannot show that on this video. You cannot, because I'm sure it would embarrass her. But that is the one time I ever saw her even swear, much less, you know, be less than totally courteous to everyone, no matter if they're a jerk or not.
I think of Sudine as the ultimate role model. She is somebody who has just achieved the best that can be achieved in her field. She is somebody to be looked up to, not only as a woman, but as just a true professional.
Sudine told me that she is now teaching at George Washington University Law School a single course in energy law. She emailed after the course was over in May saying she had a great time teaching. And I'll tell you, my fondest dream is that after she becomes a person who wants to leave the practice of law, she'll come back to New Mexico and she'll be in our classroom and she'll be teaching ad law, natural resources law, public utilities law, and our students will get the benefit of what a whole generation of students got a long time ago.
I found it very impressive as well that as a New Mexican, Sudine was able to leap onto the national stage. She was appointed as a commissioner at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC. She did a spectacular job there, and now she has established herself as nationally and maybe globally as a leading practitioner in energy regulatory law. Nevertheless, several of us in New Mexico are hoping that we can lure her back here to New Mexico since she still has deep roots here.
Sudine is deserving of this award because when she was hired at the law school, she was the perfect hire. She brought an element that didn't exist before, which is letting students know that there is more than just the courtroom. There's administrative practice, lots of areas, and I'm a beneficiary of that myself in that I have sort of a mix of litigation as well as administrative practice. And she was here for, you know, at least 15 years, I believe, and was well loved by her students, and then went on to achieve great things.
I was really honored to be asked to provide these comments, and Sudine, thank you for asking me to contribute this, but also thank you for all your support and teaching and wisdom over the years. And again, we hope to see you back here in New Mexico with us sometime soon.
Sudine, I want to sincerely congratulate you for this well-deserved award, and thank you for the honor of being asked to comment about your illustrious career.
Sudine, in closing, I'd like to say thank you. Thank you for all you did as a professor at the law school. Thank you for all you did in Washington, D.C. on the FERC Commission. And most of all, thank you very much for all you do and constantly do in Washington, D.C. to help the UNM Law School. And as I already said, my fondest wish is that you will come back to the law school and I will be able to say, there is a great professor who has returned to teach our students.
Please welcome to the stage Sudine Kelly.
Thank you. Thank you all for being so kind to me tonight. It's been particularly a thrill to see so many of my students, former students here. And I want you to know that I continue to be in awe of you, of your accomplishments in my classes, and now all of your accomplishments in your careers. And I want to thank you for making it fun for me as well. I'll never forget when you picked me up at home. I think it was Kidnap the Professor Day, in a big red fire truck driven by Steve Scholl. And my daughters, who were in elementary school at the time, will never forget it either. I'm also indebted to my colleagues on the faculty. You all know Ted. Ted inspired me. He was my role model. He inspired me to not only be a good teacher, but to attempt to match his enthusiasm and his passion and his caring for his students in the classroom. And Rob Schwartz, with whom I co-taught legislative administrative process for many years, showed me that we could actually make administrative law less dry by crafting hypotheticals that tactfully, of course, and tastefully, of course, had to include money, power, and sex. And it worked. And I want to give a hearty thank you to my daughters, Vicki and Katie, for fostering any success that I may have had along the way. They encouraged me, for example, to teach energy law, even if, as they said, it's pretty nerdy, Mom. One really good piece of advice they gave me is, he said, you need to change the name of that course to something at least a little cooler than energy law. And I did. I called it Gushers, Geysers, and Gold, and my student enrollment tripled. And finally, I couldn't be up here on this podium tonight if it were not for the support of Fred Hart. He took a chance on me back when he offered me a job in 1986, and he supported me all the way through. I wish he were here tonight. So that I could properly thank him for the shoulders he gave me to cry on when I needed that, and those hugs he gave me when life was pretty rosy. Could I have that? This one's for you, Fred.
Thank you so much, Professor Kelly. It's an honor personally to get to meet you. And while I'm a little sorry to do it after that really wonderful speech, I do have to say I'm a bit disappointed because I was hoping we'd hear you curse for the second time. And we didn't get so much as a firk out of you. Okay. You're going to have to come back to teach because I will be fired after this. Our third Distinguished Achievement Award honoree of the evening is David Martinez. David is an Albuquerque native and a graduate of Fatima Catholic School and the Albuquerque Academy. His connection to the law school started really early because he grew up with some of Fred Hart's children. He did go to Notre Dame University for his undergraduate degree, but came back home to get his law degree at UNM, where he was the president of the Student Bar Association. And he parlayed that service to the law school into, after graduation, 35 years on the Alumni Association Board of Directors. And in those years, David chaired the committee that puts on this dinner, by his estimate, at least 7 times. So he is no stranger to the proceedings here tonight. He's chaired all sorts of fundraising committees and has been a stalwart supporter of the law school for a really long time. He also happens to, in his day job, be the senior shareholder and president of Martinez, Hart, Sanchez, and Romero, which is an all UNM Law alumni law firm. Let's hear a little bit more about our third Distinguished Achievement Award honoree, David Martinez.
Well, actually, I've been David's partner for 30 years. This winter, it'll be 30 years. I've known David since I was in first grade. He was a couple years older than me. He is a couple years older than me. He was a classmate of my sister's, and we all went to Our Lady of Fatima. And David was, one of the big kids. He was a really cool kid, great basketball player.
He was in my law school class. But the reality is that when I was in high school, he went to the Albuquerque Academy, and I went to Manzano High School. So I was a public school girl. And my friends and I decided to go over to the, girlfriends decided to go over to the Albuquerque Academy like we would not be discovered in the hallways, And when we were there, we saw David Martinez, who we thought was very cute. And then when he walked in on law school, I was like, yes.
David started law school when I became dean, I think. And so while we knew each other, because you know all the students, I really became closely acquainted with David in his third year because he was SBA president. And as everyone knows, SBA presidents work very closely with the deans of the law school. And that's really when I became friends of David.
I was a few years behind him at the same high school, and then a few years behind him at this law school. And then Roger Eaton, who taught us both in high school, brought us together and we created a firm together.
He's very prepared, very passionate, very client-centered, and somewhat relentless. David would call me many, many times a year to buy a table for the law school or for many other things that involved money. And so in order to get me to talk for him today, he called me and I didn't pick up. And he called me again and I didn't pick up. And finally he texted me and he said, "I'm not asking you for money." And I said, okay. I called him back. But yes, he's relentless.
Stood out then, stands out now. David is a very focused person, very organized person, and what an advocate for the students with it. Right? He would come in, he knew what he wanted, right? And he would present it, and we worked well. I mean, he served the students well, and I think he served the law school very well.
I think what I love about David, and what anybody that knows him well loves about David, is he is the most loyal and trustworthy person that you can have on your team. And that sounds kind of, okay, that sounds all right, great, but he truly is. But more than that, he is an inspiration. He is the voice in the back of your head when you're trying to make a tough decision. And he's also the arm around you when you're down and things are not going well.
I think David really likes to build things, and I think what he wanted to do with the law school is build any kind of endowment that he could to make it a stronger place. He also, in talking to people in his firm, he has built this really remarkable firm. And what's remarkable about it is that the lawyers and the staff tell me that he sits down with them and tries to find out what their personal goals are and how the firm can help them reach their goals. So on the one hand, David comes off like a hard ass. But on the other hand, he is really someone who listens and builds on what he hears and kind of creates things.
He knows how important it is to bring the family together in the office. And that word isn't hollow, it's real. He knows the names of all the spouses. He knows the ages of all the children. He has us all over his house routinely just to be together. Like he's been at my side, he's been at the side of our employees through really hard times. And doesn't ask for anything from it. That's just who he is.
David has been active in the Alumni Association since he left school. And then more specifically, these annual alumni dinners. Right? I always said David was the soul of these dinners.
The thing I will say is that he is very client-centered. I mean, he is very, very connected to his client. And the thing that I think I've learned about David, he doesn't come off as an emotional person when you meet him. He comes off like, just a guy with no emotions, or very well hidden emotions, right? But he is very emotional, and he gets very, first of all, he relates to his clients in both a legal and an emotional way. I think he really counsels his clients. So I have the utmost respect for him as a lawyer, but he's not always easy.
Ask around this place. Anytime anybody needs anything at the law school, whether it's to throw a dinner for a dean candidate or a reception for new students or anything, David is first in line. He's the first name on people's minds often too. Like, well, we'll get Dave Martinez, he'll do it. And he always has. I mean, he always has. This dinner, I'm not sure if it was his idea, but I think it was. I mean, and think of all the people that have benefited from just this event. Yeah, I think you can't really separate David from the law school or the law school from David.
When we were in law school, I think every year he was the president of whatever was the president of the law school, the student, I don't even know, because that was not something that I did. Every year he was. And then after that, he truly was an advocate for the law school. He was always, as I said, trying to get us to give money for scholarships, whatever event came on. I mean, he, like all of us, loves the law school. And I think it was one of his missions to make sure that it is supported as much as he could possibly support it. And he was, and he still is.
Two aspects of David that I respect the most, or at least remember the most, are first, as I said, his organization, his dedication, his passion for whatever he does. If he does something, he does it, right? The ball doesn't drop. The other side of it is Notre Dame. That's it. That's it. I mean, David, like most graduates of Notre Dame, is a fighting Irish. That's it. And I remember from the beginning days in which I met and got to know David, his constant discussion about Notre Dame, especially during football season.
He is passionate about his family, and he is, after all these years, madly in love with Kim. It is just the sweetest thing. And his kids, you know, he is, I think he helped Madeline, again on the whole building theme, his daughter is very much into horses, and so he was real involved in helping her get a business started in Albuquerque, and you know, he's just very devoted to his family. And I don't really know how he does it all, because he's really devoted to his family, he's really devoted to his work, and devoted to the community. So I don't know how he does it. He's very efficient.
For 30 years, my desk has been 25 feet from his. Literally, you go out my door, you go in his door. No matter where we officed, we were right next to each other. It has been that way for 30 years. And he's a brother. He's like a brother to me in so many ways. And I think he would agree that, like brothers, there are times when we see things very differently and dig in, and sometimes stupidly, sometimes over stupid things, sometimes over things that do seem like principle. And your brother is who you run to when there's trouble. And that's Dave.
David, thank you so much for letting me speak for you. It was a real honor, and this award is so well deserved for you. There's nobody that I can think of who has supported the law school more than you, and I want to thank you for that as well.
David, congratulations. I personally thank you for all the help you have given me, and especially the law school. You are so deserving of this award after all the years in which you have worked to make this award and this dinner what it is.
David deserves to be honored tonight by the law school for lots and lots of reasons, but perhaps the simplest is he is all the best that this law school can do. He is all those things. I mean, he is an extraordinarily gifted lawyer. He works very, very hard for his clients. He is, he has a loyalty to the principles of justice and fairness and equality that is unshakable. It's unshakable. I've never heard David either take a case or not take a case because of money. That may not sound like a big deal, but it is. It's can we help? What can we do to help? That's the beginning and the end of it for David. And he is a product of this place. He's a product of his own upbringing, his mom and his dad, his brothers and sisters. But he's a product of this school, and we all should be very proud.
Please welcome to the stage, David Martinez.
Wow, I'm going to do a rebuttal on all that good stuff. I'm going to ask my wife, Kim, my son, Kellen, and my daughter, Madeline, to stand so that together the four of us can thank all of you very much. For coming here tonight and supporting the law school. I just want to thank the school and the Alumni Association also for making this such a special night for our family. This is the 30th year of the Distinguished Achievement Award dinner. We had a couple years where we didn't have it, so this is only the 28th dinner, I think, and Kim and I have been to 26 of those, if I got my count right. There have been about 100 awardees. Some of those deans of the law school, some of them my professors, and others lawyers who I looked up to my whole career. To stand up here and receive this award is an incredibly humbling experience, but it also makes me so proud to be a member of this community. To do this on a night when also being honored are Linda Banzi, Sudine Kelly, Phil Davis, and Rebecca Gallegos makes it even more special to me. I also have family and very close friends who are here tonight with me, and they don't know that much about my relationship with the law school. I think they probably got 10 times the knowledge that they had just from watching that video. By the way, they don't show you the video before you stand up here, so it makes it a little more difficult. You see, this award is not about me. I didn't even know I wanted to be a lawyer. My brother called me up a couple times while I was in college, told me to apply to law school, and I told him, you know, I'm just trying to graduate. If I can do that, I definitely don't want to go back to school. But he finally sent me a check, and I took the LSAT. I forgot about it completely until Fred Hart called me one day at work, and he said, hey, we have this LSAT score over here at UNM, but if you want to go to law school, you have to apply. And I told him, thank you very much, but I was having a good time being in the accounting department at Springer Corporation, and that was that. But I made the mistake of telling my boss, Al Vio, who was the president of the corporation. And about a week later, Al Vio came into my office and he said, I think you ought to go to law school. So I did. I started in 1979, but that wasn't really the end of it. I still had my doubts. My family was having a lot of trouble at the time, both financially and practically. My younger sister was trying to get through high school, which is difficult for all of us, but the circumstances were difficult. And the day before my advocacy argument, first year of law school, my dad fell out of his wheelchair. He was already paralyzed, but he fell out of his wheelchair, hit his head, and had a brain damage. So I went in the next day after my advocacy argument and told the office at the law school that I'd be withdrawing. And maybe a couple days, maybe a week after that, I got a call from the dean's office, and Bob Desiderio called me in and said, I don't think it's a good idea for you to quit. And at UNM Law, when somebody starts school with us, we don't want them to graduate. You know, the point I have to make is that University Law School of New Mexico Law School is a unique and very special place. Back in the 70s, law schools were proud of themselves that students were dropping out in first and second year. They thought it was a mark that they were more rigorous or more challenging program. And yes, the students at University of New Mexico Law School were very competitive, but we got the message loud and clear by the end of the first year that there was a different value at UNM Law School. We were inclusive. We were encouraged to pull each other up and graduate together. I deeply appreciate the Distinguished Achievement Award. But I have to tell you, the big gift that I got was what I received between 1979 and 1982, and that was my education. It's not just the skills of being able to be a lawyer and pass the test. It was the values I learned by being a member of the community, and it stuck with me. They're unique to UNM Law School. Lastly, I want to ask my partner, Mike Hart, my younger partners, Kelly Stout-Sanchez and Julio Romero, and the staff and the other attorney at the firm to stand up. were decimated this week by COVID again. Please stand, my team at the firm. I also want to recognize my legal assistant for the last 28 years, Shaylin Burley. She can't be here with us tonight, and she's fighting a disease over the last 2.5 years that keeps her at home, but she's been a part of everything I've done. You just don't do stuff like this alone, and I'm sure every one of these people who have been up here tonight, and Judge Vanzi will tell you, it's a team effort, everything we do. The most special thing we get to do at our firm is that ordinary people come in and they've had probably the worst things that ever happened to them or their family have just happened to them, and it's a terrible day. And what we learned at UNM Law School and the powerful license that we've received to practice law usually allows us to help them. And it's just this most incredible feeling. And it's sustained me for 40 years, being able to go back and get that feeling all the time. Anything good that I did or that the board committee that has to do with this award comes from the support of my family, my partners over the years, many of whom are here tonight, and the foundation that I received from my education at University of New Mexico Law School. I just appreciate it so much that all of you are here and that I am receiving this award. My initial thought when I got the call was I don't really deserve it, but I do deeply appreciate it, and I'll remember this night forever. Thank you.
Oh, thank you immensely, David Martinez, for a literal lifetime's worth of service to the law school and an incredible example you've set for all the rest of us. And what a personal thrill for me to share the stage with the law school, the cutest boy in law school. And he didn't even ask me for money. Last, but certainly not least, our final Distinguished Achievement Award honoree this evening is the Honorable Linda Vanzi. Judge Vanzi was born in Pakistan and grew up in, brace yourselves, Pakistan, Hong Kong, Singapore, London, Dallas, and San Francisco. She attended college in New York and then worked on the East Coast and then eventually in Texas, but finally found her way out west to Taos, where she ran the restaurant that she owned until the day came she decided to enroll at UNM School of Law. After law school, like her fellow honoree Phil Davis, the Honorable Judge Vanzi clerked for the Honorable Edwin L. Meacham. In her own legal career, she would go on to serve as a trial judge at the 2nd Judicial Circuit District Court before she joined the New Mexico Court of Appeals, where she served for over a decade. And then she retired from the bench, but joined the Rohde law firm and continued her practice all the while during her copious spare time, teaching dozens of classes at the law school as an adjunct professor, including some required first-year courses, and mentoring countless law students and young lawyers even outside the classroom. Let's all turn our attention one more time to the TV screen to learn more about our final recipient of the Distinguished Achievement Award, the Honorable Linda Vanzi.
Linda Vanzi is masterful at everything she does, which can be slightly frustrating, but also amazing. Like when she was serving on the district court, she was working so hard and she was always like, I'm gonna do pottery. And I was like, yeah, whatever, we all say that. I wanna do all these brilliant things. Well, of course, then she took a class and she took like 2 classes and she's like, boom. And she's like, beautiful stuff, incredible things. Anything she does, she kind of does masterfully. How do you not know Linda Vanzi? Linda and I met decades ago at the New Mexico Women's Foundation with Diane Wood. I don't know if you're old enough to remember her. She was our very own Texan. And we were doing grants reviews and Diane comes in with this like stack of paper, plunk. And Linda and me and a whole bunch of other people read through every single one of them. And that was the beginning.
My name is Sarah Shore, and I clerked for Judge Vanzi beginning in the fall of 2019 until her retirement.
I'm Adam Flores. I clerked for Judge Vanzi from 2014 to 2016.
She's one of my very best people in all the world, and we have done a million things together over decades. And I think one of my favorite things about her is how flexible she is. No matter when you think you know Linda Vanzi, there's something else that pops up.
My favorite thing about clerking with Judge Vanzi was that she really invited collaboration, and she put such good thinking into every case and encouraged us to take the time that we needed on every case to do the research, read the briefs, and just make the decision and the path through the decision as good as we could make it. And that's just a lovely work environment to be in.
Linda Vanzi's sense of truth is really one of the purest I've ever known. And she's very complicated. Everybody who knows her knows that. I'm not like, oh, she's simple and easy. And she really believes in everybody having a shot. And she really believes in a kind of democratic approach to things. She'll fight just as hard for somebody who's a nobody and is never going to thank her as for somebody who will give her access to power. It means everything to her. She's a really critical thinker. She loves to think about context as well as the long-term stuff. She'll always be talking about, I want to think about this law or this opinion and what it's going to be 5 years from now and 50 years from now. And I always thought that was brilliant.
My favorite thing about clerking for Judge Vanzi was her mentorship and learning from her. She would take me to lunch at Padilla's and talk to me about my career, and she really sort of steered me away from some bad ideas, and I got to learn a lot about hard work and just learning from a great legal mind. That, I really respected Judge Vanzi for that.
She immigrated from Pakistan. Her mom and her brother fled Pakistan in the middle of the night, kind of a classic, intense story. She lived in Hong Kong and Singapore for years. She didn't become a naturalized citizen in the United States until she was out of high school. And she always said that she loved the rule of law because she was raised in a country that didn't have it. And she remembers stuff going on in Pakistan that was missing the rule of law, for sure. And so I think that's been really influential in her. And in some ways, I think it's very beautiful. Immigrants can help us see ourselves and see our strengths in really beautiful ways. And Linda always would speak to the strength of our judicial system and how impressed she was by it and how proud she was to be a part of it.
But she's also fascinated with people. Like, she really enjoys people. And so I loved talking with Judge Vanzi about food and gardens and art and poetry and music. We would go for walks. It was just such an enjoyable interpersonal experience.
Linda Vanzi is very sassy. We went to the Grand Canyon one time when we hiked all the way in, stayed down there all the way out, and I don't know if you know this about her, but she's an insane athlete. Like, you don't expect it because she's like as big as a finger, but you go on a hike with her and she eats like a jelly bean and a cracker, and then she like hikes 10 miles. It's crazy. So at the Grand Canyon, we're hiking out, and we're with this friend of mine who's a triathlete, and my brother who's a big basketball jock, and Linda smokes us all the way to the top, like in an hour or something. And what does she do? She turns around and she comes back down, just to be sassy with us. How's your walk going? I've already been to the top. This is the temperature at the top. So yeah, sassy and athletic.
She has like a weird way of remembering everybody's birthdays, and I don't know how, but she she knows my birthday. I'm sure she probably knows my family members' birthdays, and I think it's part of she just cares about us, and she's heard so much about me and my family that she just knows. But I always feel bad because I can't even remember my mom's birthday, but Judge Vanzi knows everybody's birthday.
She so loves young people and people who are starting their law career, and I know that lots of people are like, I mentor people, but Linda's joy in young people and her joy in mentoring them is so inspiring. And once she is on your side, she is like the most loyal, and I'm saying that after 30 years of ups and downs. She is so loyal, and she's such a great mentor, and I've seen her wholeheartedly engage so many people in this community. And when you're a young nobody and a judge hands you a card and says, call me anytime, and means it, it matters. It matters. So I think her mentorship has been really important to the community. She's given people a sense of access to our judiciary and our systems and our schools, and that's really essential.
One sweet thing about Judge Vanzi that I remember from the clerkship is whenever there was a dog around, Judge Vanzi will be on the floor with the dog because she loves dogs so much. And it was so sweet to find there were a couple of times that there was a puppy around, and I went in to talk to her about something, and she was on the floor of her office with a puppy.
She's always got somebody that she's just like, I met this great new law student, Michael. He's from, Hurley, New Mexico. He's going to be brilliant. And then 5 years later, she's like, oh, I'm having burritos with Michael. Like, they're still in her life. Super sweet.
Professionalism was very important to her, both with the advocates in the Court of Appeals and then with her colleagues as well. Respect for the other clerks. I felt any clerk could just go in and talk to her. She's welcoming to people who want to ask legal questions or talk about a case.
I think that the UNM School of Law means everything to Linda. I think when you come to this country as an immigrant and you're a late, she wasn't 18 when she went to law school. I think it was kind of an audacious dream for this woman in Taos to think, I'm going to be a lawyer and a judge. And the UNM Law School is where she was able to find that. And there were professors here that saw her brilliance and cultivated it. They stayed in touch with her. They supported her career. The community, Phil Davis and other lawyers have mentored her. I think the law school means everything to her, and that's why she continues to come back. And she teaches, and she always is mentoring law students. She's been very intentional about trying to hire almost all of her clerks from the UNM School of Law, which not everybody does. Yeah, I think UNM School of Law is lucky to have her. She's lucky to have them, and I think Linda Vanzi should be the mascot.
She's just done a lot for civil rights in New Mexico, and so it might be, my bias as a civil rights attorney, but I think just the people in New Mexico should be proud of her and that she deserves this award for everything that she's done for civil rights as a lawyer and as a judge, and now she teaches civil rights, Section 1983 to law students. She's dissented from her colleagues in important civil rights cases, which, at the Court of Appeals, there are panels of 3, so when you dissent, you do that alone. So it's a courageous act, and I think just from that alone, she deserves this award.
I think she's out there making friends, connecting with people. She can talk to anybody. I have been in a million different settings with her, and she can sit down with me. I've worked in decarceration work. She can sit down with a felon and end up talking about the law with somebody who has no understanding about the law, but whose life has been derailed and they've been incarcerated. Like, think about the distance, the polarities there. And Vanzi Pants can sit down and talk to that person about law.
And one of the things I realized clerking for her is that she mentors everyone. Every day she was going on a walk with someone else that she was mentoring or supporting in many cases. And I think she's a living example of the reality that if you give generously of your gifts, you find that you have more, because she seems to always have more.
Linda really deserves this honor and this recognition for a million reasons. Certainly for being a hard worker. Linda Vanzi has so much hustle. She gets more done by 7 a.m. than the rest of us do all week. And I am not joking, she is on nonprofits boards, she works hard at her legal practice. When she was on the judiciary, she was handling a huge caseload, but also always educating herself, always putting herself out there to be smarter, to understand more, and not just reading legal things, but trying to understand social movements, trying to understand how power is shifting in the country, trying to understand demographics, how this Constitution can serve everybody, like hustle, hustle, hustle. Has worked hard for decades and apparently is going to continue to work hard for decades. I see no slowing.
Judge, I am so honored that you chose me out of all the people to speak, especially here with Sarah, with your former clerk. And I'm very honored to be selected to speak for you.
And I feel the same way, Judge. I was so moved that you would ask me to say some words about you. And it is an absolute privilege to sit here today.
Congrats, Judge. Enjoy your night.
Huge congratulations.
Congratulations, Linda. I am, as always, so proud of you, and was nervous about doing this, but now I could talk for hours about all the reasons you deserve this award, and I love you very much.
Please welcome Judge Vanzi to the stage.
I have to put on glasses. Thank you all for staying. I hope it's staying till the end, and I hope it's not the bitter end for you. So when I learned that I'd been chosen for this award, I wondered if it was because of my advanced age when they start giving out awards like this. So in search of a clue, I went and Googled my name and this award. And this is what I found: Distinguished Achievement Award, UNM School of Law, Linda Vanzi, middle-aged woman of color with gray hair, standing inside. Point made, right? So bewildered, I checked out the other honorees and found that David Martinez is a middle-aged man with a suit and tie outside. Phil Davis is a middle-aged man in a suit and tie. Sudine Kelly, however, was an adult white woman with pearls, as though they couldn't tell the two of us apart from each other. As for Rebecca Gallegos, she either threatened or bribed everybody who was writing this stuff up, because there was nothing about her appearance or where she was standing. It was all about her accomplishments. Just saying. Mysteries and deductions aside, it's an honor to be recognized, especially with this group of honorees, not only because I respect their accomplishments and contributions, but also because each of them has positively impacted my own life. David Martinez graciously supported my efforts to keep my seat on the district court and later on the Court of Appeals. I missed the chance to study with Sudine Kelly 30 years ago because she was on sabbatical then when I took that required 1L class she taught. But I gained a dear friend in the guy with the fabulous ties who taught in her place that year, Andy Schultz, a friendship I value greatly. Phil Davis gave me my first opportunity to be a real lawyer in a real trial with real witnesses. It was a generous act that enabled me not only to learn from Phil, but also to see myself as worthy of his trust. I miss Phil every day. As for Rebecca Gallegos, her abilities along with her humility and wisdom remind me that there's reason to hope for the future. So as I was thinking about these other honorees, the reflection sort of reminded me of Joseph Campbell's observations about an essay that the philosopher Schopenhauer wrote. So with apologies to both, and I need to sort of get this right, the gist is this: When you reach a certain age and you look back over your life, it seems to have been composed by someone. And events that seemed accidental or insignificant when they occurred turn out to have been indispensable plot points. Who composed it? Schopenhauer suggests that just as your dreams are composed by an aspect of yourself of which your consciousness is unaware, so your whole life has been composed by the will within you. The people you thought you met by chance were agents in the structuring of your life. And the whole thing gears together like a symphony. It's as though our lives are the dream of a single dreamer, in which all the dream characters are dreaming too, and everything links to everything else. I am grateful for the dreamers who helped to create the movements in my symphony. I can't thank everybody, but I want to mention a few people. Ann Scales taught me, among many things, to think beyond boundaries. Maureen Sanders, who is the world's greatest procrastinator, if you know her, decided that our moot court team needed a lesson in the evils of procrastination, and taught that lesson to me and Jane Gagney and the rest of the team by putting us in the library basement one night and kept us there until we finished our brief. She did leave a bottle of whiskey on her way out the door. I later had the opportunity of a lifetime to learn from Anne, Mo, and a team that included someone I was introduced to as the boy lawyer, David Stout, while working on the NARAL case, an experience that was not much unlike being locked in the basement, only it was a whole lot longer. My NARAL mentors became cherished friends for life. As a judge, I considered my relationships with my law clerks to be the best part of my job. They are proof that I actually did make good decisions on the court. Those relationships endure, and they're a gift. Every lawyer needs a non-lawyer in their life, and I'm indebted to Jennifer Gardner, whose perspective and support had a profound impact on me, even when things didn't make sense to her, which was most of the time when it dealt with the law. Reba Rakowski's confidence and trust has enabled me to navigate this road. There have been ample difficulties and obstacles along the way, and she's always helped me see my way past them. Finally, my parents couldn't be here tonight, but as most of our parents, they're always in my ear. I owe everything to my mother, who put steel in my spine, and my father, who put grace in my heart. I'm grateful for this award, and I want to thank the law school and for all the dreamers who made this night possible. Thank you.
Well, you've done it again, friends. You've made it through another Distinguished Achievement Awards dinner. We have a few items of thanks before we can fully conclude. Let's first thank the Alumni Association Board of Directors for putting this on and for doing everything they do. Let's thank the sponsors. Let's thank the sponsors, especially Jenner and Block and Martinez, Hart, Sanchez, and Romero, whose generosity have funded a lot of scholarships here tonight. Thank you to the friends and family of our honorees for dedicating their time to making these wonderful tribute videos. And thanks to the staff of the law school, especially Tony Anderson over there in the corner, for putting these videos together. Were these good or what? Did you notice how many times they filmed in the library where there was no one? They knew it would be quiet. Thank you to Alumni Association Board of Director Sam Adams, who couldn't be here tonight but was also instrumental in putting the videos and tonight together. Thank you again to our honorees, and then last on the list, but first in our hearts, a hearty thanks to Melissa Lobato for wrangling the cats. The final business for the evening is for you to take off of your table as you go home tonight. Two things. One, the Parnell Law branded glasses, and two, the floral centerpieces. And I'm told that it's not water in those vases, it's Grey Goose vodka, people, so don't leave them behind. Thank you and good night.